have a question from Jake Feinberg at ArsenalJF on Twitter. This is a great young listener of ours. Says, my father spends every day talking about the 26th of May, 1989, from the moment he wakes up until he's fast asleep. I'm 15 now, and I feel like I don't have a father. Can you please tell him he has a family and 2 kids that are going off to college soon?
Wow. That's a dream, isn't it? We're still talking about it. Wow.
Yeah, that's my son, Jake, by the way.
Oh, that's your son. I didn't say anything derogatory there, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's all right. I think he wants you to give me back to him. So.
I grant you. Yeah, I release you.
Okay, perfect. And he asked a serious question. That wasn't his question. His real question was, who do you find more entertaining to watch? Messi, Ronaldo, or Al-Adin Mustafi? No, just Messi and Ronaldo. Where he wants you to settle the debate once and for all.
Yeah, everyone loves to kind of choose between the two.
Another comparison for you to choose.
Everyone loves to do that. I mean, both playing, at their pomp as they have been, are just both compelling to watch. I mean, we've had more Messi lately, haven't we? In some of the later rounds, the home game against Liverpool when he was exceptional, got that free kick. And the games before that, when he's kind of won matches on his own, he's astonishing the way he keeps on going. But Ronaldo's the same. You asked me to choose. Messi's slightly more of a team player, but I mean, I just
more entertaining. I mean, I don't know what the guideline is for that, but
yeah, I know. It depends what you like in football. If you like somebody, climbing at the far post and powering in a header, you're not going to see Messi do that too many times. Ronaldo's a brilliant header of the ball. So I suppose those jinky runs of Messi's, those are things you look at. Ronaldo doesn't do that quite so much anymore. The foot overs and that, he's changed his game. But it's an amazing era for us that we've got these 2 players, 2 of the best that have ever played the game of football,
who really seem to want to one-up each other. I mean, I'm sure that they are not rivals in the personal sense behind the scenes, but professionally, when you have 2 people with those kinds of talents who really do want to be known as the best, it seems important to both of them. The levels just go absolutely nuts.
Yeah, but there are egos involved, aren't there? There's bound to be, and I think that does push them on.
So, by the way, Andrew, the Hinckley Gooner is devastated and mortally wounded that you don't remember the night in the Radisson that you spent with him. Well, that sounded bad. From Steve Moore at Gunnermore 1978 on Twitter. Now, this is something I've heard before. I know that you've heard it before, but once and for all, why does Alan seem to be overly harsh on Arsenal while commentating?
Well, I think fans would listen to it with a different ear to maybe a neutral. I don't think I'm overly harsh. I just try and be fair, and maybe people expect me to err on the side of Arsenal, but I just try and avoid doing that because I'm commentating for both sets of fans when people switch on the telly. So, if I have gone the other way a little bit too much, I hold my hands up. I'm sorry about that, but I just try and do my best. I just try and be fair, really. I love Arsenal Football Club, but I can't be a tub thumper on there for Arsenal when I'm commentating. That just goes against my nature. I just have to try and be fair to both sides and be equal as much as, I want Arsenal to be successful. So I do get that leveled at me, but, there's no agenda there whatsoever. Arsenal's in my blood, and it always will be. But I have a job to do, and I try and do it to the best of my ability.
Yeah, and Nicky Wilson states in the chat, he says, he is actually neutral, not like the Liverpool brigade. And I'm not asking you to speak on any of your fellow pundits, but there do seem to be pundits who who played for certain teams who tend to still think that they're playing for certain teams when it comes to their comments. And I think it's the sign of a professional broadcaster that, is able to separate the two, as frustrating as it may be for fans who want, a homer. Lee Dixon, we hear Lee Dixon all the time over here in the States. and quite often he's doing games that Chelsea are playing in or Spurs are playing in, and he's on a par with anybody as a color commentator, as we call him, and clearly doesn't show any bias one way or the other. Although sometimes he spars with Graham Lasso when they're doing a 3-man booth, but as you should. From the lovely Becca, who is also in the chat, at Gunnar Becca on Twitter, what advice would you give a 12-year-old footballer, her nephew in this case, who wants to make the sport his career?
To stay nice and relaxed. Don't try and get too intense about it. To enjoy your football. To obviously practice really hard. If you love the game, practicing won't be a chore. It never was with me. But don't see it as the be-all and end-all. Have other interests as well. Obviously, the more you practice, the better you get. That's undeniable. But don't put all your eggs in one basket. When I was growing up, I was serious about my studies as well. I knew there was a slim chance of making it, and there's a tiny chance of making it, in the professional game at the top level. So I think that's the thing with kids. Some, see the money and the fame, and that's what they go for, which is the wrong way to pursue it. You've got to have a love for the game and just want to be as good as you possibly can at it, and that only comes with practice. But yeah,
how big a part do the parents play in all of this as well? Because we have a huge, I don't know over there, but we have a huge problem over here with parents who seem to want it for their kids more than the kids want it themselves.
Yeah, exactly. It's a meal ticket. They see it as, I think, living out their dreams and fantasies through their child, and putting too much pressure on that kid. I mean, I saw it when I was growing up. There were dads that were screaming at their lads right through the 90 minutes of matches, and it affected these boys. So yeah, just try and keep a level, kind of attitude to it. Do your best, but if it doesn't happen, it's not the end of the world.
Excellent. And for this particular 12-year-old's father, he has to choose a better football club to support so his child doesn't get disillusioned, because my belief is that her brother is a Manchester United fan. So that's my advice. Not that it was asked for, but Alan's, yours is fantastic. Hopefully it'll make its way to her nephew. From Mr. DJ, as a former player with the club, do you personally believe the club had to move from Highbury and couldn't just have redeveloped the North Bank and Clock End to increase capacity to 50,000 instead of moving to the Emirates? Or was the move absolutely necessary in your opinion?
I think they did look at extending. Obviously, the East and the West, they couldn't really do much with, and that's probably what held them back. The North Bank had already been developed. So corporate hospitality is such a big thing these days, isn't it? So there's a limitation to what they could do with that as well. They're looking at Old Trafford that was housing about 70,000, and they just felt they had to move. And I still speak to an awful lot of fans that pine for Highbury. They still haven't fallen in love with the Emirates. But say if we were to clinch a league title there or something, you need memories associated with these new grounds, and we've had a few, but maybe not enough. It's called progress, isn't it? Liverpool have stayed where they are. I think they're going to extend. A bit more difficult for Highbury, where it was situated, in amongst those the flats at the back of the Clock End and that. So yeah, I think it would have been almost impossible to achieve that capacity that they wanted and all the facilities that go with a modern football ground. I mean, look at Spurs. I mean, that's the best ground I've ever visited. It's the best ground in the world now. They've set new standards, and Arsenal wouldn't have been able to have got even close, I don't think, at Highbury, as much as we love the place.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that we couldn't get the revenues that the Emirates bring us, or even just a smaller portion, without losing the complete atmosphere and the feeling. I mean, I think the same thing has happened with West Ham. You go for the glory and you go for the money so that you can be competing with the best clubs in the world, as we were told. and you lose something. And until, I think that's a great point, until there's something to look at other than individual games and Champions League qualifiers and those sort of thing that we have at Emirates, it's never really going to feel the same. From Mikey Hernandez, your goal in the European Cup final was the first Arsenal goal I ever saw, and I've been hooked ever since. So you're responsible for this. Thank you so much. Welcome back, Andy. Question: if a player you approached to sign for the Arsenal told you that he wanted to wait until it was sure whether the club qualifies for the Champions League before he signs, is that a player that you would want to come back on the club or just to sign for the club? He doesn't want to just join for the joining of Arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, it's reality in the modern world. I think, if you're one of the top players, you do want to be in that prestige competition. Even if the money's right, Arsenal are satisfying your wage demands. I'm not going to say you're signing the wrong type of player because of it. It is just a fact of life. The agents get involved. But yeah, you want to be signing players for the right reason. Obviously, if they only want to come for the money, that's a different thing altogether. But if they're looking at the Champions League, that's a part of their profession. That is all to do with their football career. So that's slightly different, much different than just simply joining the club for money.
Yeah, it gives me a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, it's one thing if you're considering signing for Burnley and the Champions League is not on the table. It's another, to be signing with a fifth place Arsenal and be able to be part of the return to glory. And it just seems like too many players want to join the glory that's already there. And, that just isn't the attitude that people had 20 or 30 years ago. Add me to something great already. We see it in the NBA all the time here in the States. I mean, these super teams that are assembled because of our equivalent of Bosman transfers that are just completely orchestrated, so that all of a sudden the worst team in the league becomes the best team in the league. But with a team like Arsenal, even down on their luck, down on their performance over the last few years. I get the question that's being asked. If the guy doesn't want to be here just to be here and make the team great, do you really want that person here? I guess it's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, Arsenal's a world famous club, and I think most footballers in the world would have heard of them. And that kind of heritage history, I think, does attract players. It certainly attracted me. Obviously, you could be shown around Highbury in my day, and that just blew you away. But the facilities at Arsenal, with the training ground and the ground, are second to none. It's still a very attractive club. But, I'll go back to that point. The top players in the world do want to be playing in the Champions League.
Yeah, I mean, it's understandable, but maybe they can help the club get there instead of, and maybe in the situation of certain people like Alexis, the fact that they're not in it, they can look at themselves and say, it's my job to get us back in it, not just say I'm going to jump off this ship and get onto one that's already in the league. But that's my that's my own point. Danny, you're back with us.
Yeah, my router, it turned itself off.
Perfect. I mean, not perfect, but perfect that you're back. We didn't do your question yet, so you wanna throw your question out there?
Certainly. Right, good job I saved these because I had to reset the computer. Right, Alan, bit of a funny one. Oh, I think it's funny. Right, do you think, like me, it's very unfair that Gary Lineker, a fellow Leicester legend, has an icons player in FIFA 19 when you don't? You won 2 English League titles. Gary won none. You both won the Cup Winners' Cup. You both won an FA Cup and a Charity Shield. You both scored goals for England, and you won 2 Golden Boots and Gary won 0 thanks to Ian Wright at the end of 91-92 season. Is there anything you can do to fix this?
Yeah, I know he's like England's 3rd highest goal scorer, whereas I got 2. I know I won more as a player at club level, but he's a bit more famous than me, I suppose, in world football. In terms of FIFA, my voice is on there, so maybe that's enough for me. Probably haven't earned icon status just yet.
You have with us.
Yeah, well, thanks, mate.
Yeah, we have programmers that have gone in and changed the coding to our versions of the game so that you're an informed 99 rated. And I've never played the game. My son does, so I may not even be making any sense. But all I know is that I just packed an inform Alan Smith today. So Do you want to, Danny? You want to start with Jake Taylor's question?
I would do, but when I reset it, I've got to go and get the
okay. Then I'll go ahead and
history.
do it.
I've got it. I've got it. Whose question was it?
Jake Taylor.
Jake Taylor. Which one? Where are we down to? Is that the first one in the questions and comments?
No. Jake Taylor at Jake23 Taylor on Twitter.
Got it. Yeah. Have you thought about joining a club at a role at the club, or is it more difficult than that? Because we're asked, Arsenal fans are always going on about we want more people who've played for the club to represent the club at board level or some other role at the club, like Freddie Ljungberg does and Steve Bold has.
Yeah. Well, it's difficult. If I were to continue in my Sky career, it's difficult to, be associated with a club that much. I mean, when Thierry Henry wanted to come into the academy and Arsene Wenger says, well, you're going to have to leave Sky to do it. And you can understand that. It's funny, isn't it? Because in other European countries like Germany is a big example. So many ex-players are involved in the hierarchy there. Bayern Munich's full of them, Ajax as well. We don't do it so much in this country for whatever reason, which is probably a shame. It might come to the point where we do copy what they do abroad, but at the moment, no, that's not something I'm considering. If Arsenal have already got a few ambassadors, haven't they? Ray Parlour, Freddie Ljungberg's done some stuff. Pat Rice. I know Ray. I was with Ray the other day, and he's travelling to Baku, as is Pat Rice. Doing some, meeting of the fans and what have you. As it is, no, I'm happy doing what I'm doing.
Excellent. Well, we're the worse off for it, but certainly it works for you and for people playing FIFA and for people watching Sky. So, from Lee Judges at Lee Mark Judges on Twitter. Alan, do you know Lee, by the way? He's a bald guy. He hangs around hospitality with a half pint of beer and
the bell, yeah.
I mean, he's worked his way into friendships with just about every Arsenal legend, so I figured you must be among them. But anyway, Lee asks, do you think Arsenal has the same appeal now compared to when you first signed for the club? Appeal to, I'm guessing, players, to sponsors. I'm not sure how he means it, but I would imagine to players.
Well, because it's a global game now, and because of the success Arsenal have had over the last 20 years under Arsene Wenger, it's probably a more famous club worldwide. Obviously, everybody knows of the Invincibles and all the players we've had, Henri Bergkamp, Pires, and the rest of them. So from that point of view, it probably is more attractive. And I think in attracting lads from abroad, being a London club counts for a lot still. The majority probably would prefer to come to London. So that's a big selling point with us. Back in the day, it wasn't the most exotic we got was David O'Leary, So, I think, as I said earlier, that the training ground and the ground, they come, they see what they've got to offer. Living in London's got to offer. It's big. It's still a big selling point, along with the name of Arsenal. It's still, I think it's a special name, Arsenal, in the world of football still. So, if anything, probably, it's got a bigger pull than it did in my day.
Excellent. You want to go with Nate's question?
Yeah, sure. Alan, do you think Arsenal should try and build a squad around the two-striker formation going to next season? Or should Unai try and better balance the squad to maybe have a team more capable of executing his personal philosophy? He seems to be a devout 4-2-3-1 coach whenever possible in his career, but it would be a bit of, because we've got two magnificent strikers up front. So what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think Unai Emery is very much one horses for courses. He'll pick teams and shapes of teams according to the opposition. I mean, famously, he cuts up analysis video for hours on end on his own, and he's really absolutely obsessed with that, I think. So he'll look at certain challenges and think, well, do we want to play two up top here, or maybe have Aubameyang over on the left, or maybe have one of them on the bench, as he's done, many times this last season. It's great to see him in tandem. I mean, the two striker system's kind of gone out of fashion, hasn't it, really, over the last few years? But like anything, it comes back in fashion. It all goes in cycles, and fans love nothing more to see that kind of relationship, I think, and they have got a fantastic relationship on and off the pitch. So I think for Emery, he would try and get them both into the team as much as he possibly can.
Good. He's got a follow-up question, and the gist of it is there's been lots of rumours in the media that Arsenal, their two strikers, Aubameyang and Lacazette, both are wanted by bigger clubs. Barcelona have been looking at Lacazette. And he says, do you think if we can get 70 to 80 million for either one of those strikers, is that something you think we should do, and then try and fill the holes with younger players from the transfer market? Because that's the kind of thing Liverpool have made, haven't it? They get a great player, sell him for a fortune, and then go and get up-and-coming players.
Well, yeah, they have, but it's not easy to do. I mean, obviously, Coutinho, they got a great price for him, and it's even better when the player goes away and doesn't succeed, as Coutinho struggled with Barcelona. So, no, I wouldn't sell either of them for that kind of money, because, you're taking away your biggest strength in the side, that goal getting ability. And, if you want to get somebody in to replace them, how much is that going to cost? Probably more than you're going to sell them for. So, I think for Emery, he's looking just to add to that, to strengthen the defence, hopefully, the midfield too. Maybe get a wide player in. It'd be interesting summer, because he's not got fortunes to spend. He's going to have to be clever. But I don't think he'd consider selling either of those if he could possibly help it.
See, the way I read the question, he just asked if we could get 70 to 80 million for one of our strikers, should we sell them? And I thought immediately, absolutely, you sell Eddie Nketiah for 70 or 80 million. Nothing against Eddie, but
Aubameyang and Lacazette.
Yeah, I mean, you could do worse than that. One more question. Do you have time for one more?
Yeah. Okay.
All right, perfect. And it's from Tom Rosenhammer, and he brought this up about a week ago, because we were having a debate in a chat group of ours. And obviously this is started by the whole Tottenham and Liverpool in the Champions League final. Which is easier, which is harder, winning the Premier League or winning the Champions League? And I put up a pretty good, a pretty strong argument that I thought winning the Premier League was harder, which of course allows me to feel better once one of those two teams wins the Champions League, especially if it's Tottenham for the first time. He put up a very good argument, and I'll read his. After your answer, I'll read his responses as to why he thinks the Champions League is harder. But what are your thoughts on again, it's another comparison question, but what do you think is more prestigious in that between the Championship and the league, or harder to win? I would say.
I mean, I agree with you. I do think it's harder to win the league, especially the Premier League these days. I mean, blimey, Liverpool have got 97 points and they've come second. So. And with cup competitions, you can have a little bit of luck along the way. You're not going to win the league and just be lucky to do it. Just moments in time. Obviously, we can look at that Man City Tottenham match where we thought Man City were through, and VAR ruled out that last minute goal. So that they've had one or two things going in their favour. But I'm not saying they're lucky to be in the final, but I think, sometimes the best team doesn't always win a cup competition, whereas it's hard to argue that the best team hasn't won the league. And you've got to show certain characteristics, staying power, whereas you can turn it on every few weeks for the cup. You can raise your game, whereas for the league, it's week in, week out. You've got to be at it. That's why I think that's the harder one to lift. So
the takeaway from this is, Tom, I'm clearly right and you're wrong. Although I will read his points, because they're some of them are fairly interesting. It says City have bought the league at least 3 times, as have Chelsea, but you have to be very tactically astute to win away from home against Italian and Spanish sides. Many Premier League champs have tried and failed in Europe, us and Manchester City being most notable. In England, you can run and kick your way to a win. His words, not mine. Not in Europe. In UEFA, you can always get lucky in your group draw, but by the end, you'll always have to play a powerhouse or 3 to win the cup. The notion of it being a tournament that anyone could win died in 2005, when the sponsors really kicked money towards the repeat participants. Mourinho consistently lost to top 4 sides, but flat track bullied his points in games against the small team to titles and admitted as much. All your games in England are within a short plane ride or bus or train ride away. It's immeasurably more difficult to travel to other continents and win. In England, there's no threatening East Bloc or Turkish teams, some with the local police's blessing, pelting at your hotel room all night, scaring your players in the stadiums with their songs and flares and tifo, or God forbid, those Russian sub-zero temperatures. He's put a lot of thought into this.
There's a lot of points here.
Yeah, I'd play Anfield 10 times over before I volunteered to play one in Istanbul, Rome, or Moscow. Now, that's offensive because, I mean, Anfield's not an easy place to go and play and win by 2 clear goals. And lastly, Europe has always eluded us. If Spurs win Europe, they will always have that over us for eternity. Some good points are made, but I'm sticking to my guns. 38 games are more, more telling than 10, where you're playing different teams than the other teams that are in the same competition.
Yeah, I think in the Premier League, especially these days, you're playing against different types of players, aren't you? Playing against boys from different countries, so it's not like you're in the Champions League and you're coming up against different opposition. You're kind of encountering that in the Premier League every day of the week anyway these days.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. I really appreciate you sticking around for a couple extra minutes, and thanks for joining us again. Looking forward to a nice anniversary on Sunday. I hope you enjoy it and spend it, doing something that you love. And
lovely to celebrate it a little bit later next Wednesday if the Gunners, beat Chelsea. That'd be a good way to mark it, and fantastic way to the end. And
you're not involved in the broadcast of that. It's on BT, right?
It is indeed. Yeah. So I'll be at home watching.
Okay. Well, we'll wish them well there. Please, if you haven't already, subscribe. There's a link that's coming over my shoulder in a few minutes. If you're watching this anything other than live, subscribe to the podcast. Gives us a thumbs up. Alan, where can we follow? I mean, everyone knows your Twitter account, but where can we follow you and find out what you're up to these days?
Nowhere else really.
Well, just @9smudge is the Twitter account in case you don't know it already.
Yeah, I can. Yeah. But Facebook or Instagram really publicly. So I limit myself. But I hope everyone enjoyed it.
You can really get sucked in if you're on there too much. I've learned that firsthand the wrong way. Well, Danny, thank you for standing in for Andy. You're a much better looking replacement, and your head fits right into that little portico or whatever it is behind you. Is that on purpose? No. Put it back. It was fitting.
Yeah, sorry about my internet. You can blame BT for that. Hopefully, BT will make up for it in the week and broadcast us winning the Europa League. And sorry about your foot again, Alan. I'll make sure I'll never run you over again.
It's just recovering now, mate. Don't worry.
Thanks.
That was the golden boot that you ran over. All right, thanks. Cheers to everybody. Thanks for joining us in the chat, and we will hopefully see you with a happy podcast after the Europa League final. Come on, you Gooners.